10 years later, is Flint okay? There has been a lot of improvements, but not all of the damaged infrastructure from the water switch has been replaced. Residents are still wary of answers they're getting, and could there be some legal recourse left? Devin sat down with author Jordan Chariton.
All right, very happy to be joined now by the independent journalist Jordan Chariton, who has done so much work in the city of Flint, going back for years now, and his new book is We the Poisoned. Good to have Jordan joining me. Jordan, there's so much in this book that I want to talk to you about, but let's start with what you think are the biggest misconceptions that still exist. And I think the biggest, and I know this from talking to people in Flint, is we've got a whole lot of people in this country and even in this state who think that the Flint water crisis is over.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the top ones. Unfortunately, when you have, excluding yourself, media that tends to kind of forget these stories, doesn't stay as diligent, people just assume it's being fixed. But I've stayed on it. And as I show in the book, I mean, cancer is surging in Flint as a result of the long-term damage of this water. People are still getting rashes. I was just there 2 weeks ago. People are showing me fresh rashes from water, hair loss. So this is still I don't even like the word crisis. I say disaster. Yeah. And it makes sense because they have not fully replaced all the damaged infrastructure 10 years later.
And that's one of the things that is so important to understand about a water system. It is a fully cycling system. So you can't replace any of it until you've replaced all of it, right?
Correct. I mean, the media and the politicians really focused on the service lines, not to get too in the weeds, but those are just the pipes from the curb to your home. That doesn't address the main pipes that run underneath the street. They're bursting in Flint all the time. And then the interior plumbing, the pipes in your home. So basically 1 out of 3 sets of pipes have been changed, not all of them. And then there's the issue of misconceptions. I keep hearing this terminology, this was a tragedy to save money. My book exposes this was not a tragedy to save money. This was a massive for-profit scheme to make money. And obviously the consequences were deadly. And that part has been buried and it continues to be buried. Right now, I'm trying to get documents from Attorney General Dana Nessel that would expose new information about the privatization scheme that caused this. The Attorney General's office has refused to give those documents.
Explain that, because that is, I think, one of everybody's sense was that this was a city that was in financial trouble. This was a way to try to get them a coupon, basically, to try to save money on a huge expense. You see it as far more nefarious than that.
Well, if you see a half-off sale at the local mall, you're incentivized to go to your favorite store, right? Well, Detroit was price gouging Flint for, a couple of years. So folks were, rightly upset about those prices. But to avoid losing Flint as a customer, Detroit offered to cut the rate to Flint in half. And they still went to this brand new water system, which in engineering terms, kind of unheard of, to build a completely duplicate water pipeline that runs on the same exact path as the existing pipe from Detroit to Flint. It was not about saving money. The majority of that water was not even going to be used for Flint residents. It was going to be used for agriculture, auto industry, fracking around Michigan and other parts. So they basically, as a boondoggle, allowed Flint, which, as my book shows, had no credit rating, was near bankruptcy, legally could not borrow any more money. They created a fake emergency to allow Flint, a nearly bankrupt city, to borrow nearly $100 million to join a completely unnecessary new water system. And in the interim, we will use the Flint water plant, which my book exposes. Literally 2 weeks before they went online to the Flint River, they were moving people from the garbage department in Flint to the water department because they didn't have enough workers. They did not have the equipment in the plant to add the corrosion chemicals. The media always reports, they didn't add the proper chemicals. They didn't have the equipment. And my book exposes new details. Plant workers were begging not to switch to the point of, saying, heck no, toning it down. We're not ready. They were ignored because the Flint was already on the books, was already had to start paying back those bonds for the KWA. It's a really it's a complicated story, but a simple one. The age-old story. There was money to be had. Politicians and private individuals, I believe, used the city of Flint as guinea pigs.
There were so many of us covering this so intensely for a long time, and yet your book has a lot of things in it that I just kind of found rather shocking that I didn't know. Talk about, you kind of chronicle an effort by the water plant manager, a last-ditch effort to try to avert the crisis.
Yeah, I mean, there was multiple workers at the plant. We're talking 6 months earlier, a year earlier, saying we're not ready. We don't have the proper equipment. We don't have the proper staff. And they were told no is not an option. They were also told Detroit cut us off, so we don't have a choice. That was not true. Detroit was offering deals, even in the short term, for Flint to stay a customer. I basically call it these Boeing planes that are falling apart midair. That's what the Flint water plant was. It was essentially, let's just switch to the water and we'll add the parts to the plant as we go. They didn't even test the water, which legally they were supposed to, before sending it out to residents. So plant workers, tried to get meetings with state officials, deaf ears. I also learned that state official Governor Rick Snyder was warned a year before the water switch. He was briefed in person about bacterial risks of using the Flint River. He greenlit that ahead. I also obtained private testimony that was never released that the former governor did in 2020, where he's under oath, but he seems to, have selective amnesia, particularly about what and when he knew about the deadly Legionnaires outbreak. He told Congress he knew about it. He found out in January 2016 and held a press conference the next day. Well, under oath in 2020, hundreds of times he said, I don't recall, but he was not as firm that he learned of it in January of 2016. He also made statements that kind of are hard to believe, like, I don't recall if I ever spoke with my top lawyer about the Flint water crisis, even though his top lawyer was in writing urging them to get off the Flint River. So there's a lot of new developments in that book, particularly Snyder's testimony. Yeah. And it also really shows the story, I believe, of how this was systematically a narrative was created by the Snyder administration, some in the media, that this was over when, as you said, it's not over.
Yeah. We have arrived, though, at a place, Jordan, as you know, now infamously, where apparently no one is going to be held responsible for what happened in Flint. Dana Nessel took over the initial investigation, kind of did a restart, and that's been thrown out of court. Just give me your reflections on where we are from a legal recourse sort of standpoint. In fact, now we're at the point where Rich Baird is filing for a $2.8 million payout for wrongful prosecution.
Yeah, I go through the details, particularly those that were not known, about the Attorney General's decision to basically start this whole thing from scratch, which lawyers I spoke to, it was unprecedented. It's one thing to get rid of a prosecutor, Todd Flood, to drop all the charges, start from scratch. Nobody's ever heard of that before. The Attorney General Nessel, by my reporting, appointed prosecutors to replace the ones she fired that were overwhelmed and way in over their head. She was warned, and her team was warned, that the one-man grand jury they used would be challenged. They apparently were not prepared for that challenge, clearly, because it was thrown out of court. And right now, since it's been thrown out of court, as far as I know, there is no legal recourse other than lawyers I speak to believe that there is still the potential for criminal charges related to a federal racketeering case. My book details that Nessel's predecessors were building a racketeering case, RICO, created in the 70s to go after organized crime based on that financial fraud of the KWA pipeline. For whatever reason, Nessel did not follow through on that. She did not pursue that racketeering case. She right now is withholding documents from me and other journalists that would outline what those charges were, who they were going after, what the evidence was. But I believe if those documents and that information got out, there could still be charges because the statute of limitations for racketeering is a little more flexible than, misconduct in office and other things. So I implore the Attorney General, and I would implore the rest of the media, Michigan taxpayers paid millions of dollars for this investigation. There's no reason she can't release the information on what evidence was compiled, even if there needs to be some redactions.
It is a stunning place where we have arrived. And as you said off the top, we are not at the end of the road, that's for sure. Jordan Chariton is the author of We the Poisoned, Exposing the Flint Water Crisis Cover-Up and the Poisoning of 100,000 Americans. Jordan, it's really good to have you on the program again. Thanks so much for your time and for your work on this.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You bet.